So then we are back with more understandings from the time of the Second Tabernacle services, where we find in the Aramaic English translation of the word. This translation comes from the original manuscripts of the prophets of the Israelic lineage. So then we can understand the time of the end as per the great prophet Yeshayahu. We find then layers of understanding of the spring feast, the autumn feast, and also the returning of the cities of the Messiah, laid waste for many centuries. As we read then the instructions, we find then the prophet Daniel. He was mostly a statesperson, more than a prophet. However, he gave the understandings on behalf of the Gentiles mostly, because he was working for a Gentile king, and he discovered what went on then regarding the Daniel 2nd chapter, the base of the statue where iron does not mix with the clay. However, these days we are finding then many countries are preparing themselves for the new system. This morning came out a very important article on television regarding the United States and its influence upon the world, and then the usage of the USD. You find then the monetary system of the United States is yet very prominent. However, there are problems within the system, and then it's showing up via then manipulation, and the authorities then obviously making very big abuses by using the influence of this monetary system. These, plus the fact of spying on other countries, you find then Daniel, the 11th chapter, extremely important during our time, because we are living in the base of the statue where then iron does not mix with the clay, and there are lots of information. Daniel 11 should give us important indicators on how to behave and what to expect during this time. So then, we find then these prophecies very true. We are yet during the time of 11th chapter and the 4th verse. Very importantly, Israel at the moment is engaged with a war with Gaza. The Palestinians, obviously, they are complaining because they want also to have a portion of the land, and then the West Bank, Israel is violating some of the laws of the land and building where they should not. So then, the situation at the moment, as far as we can understand of the time of the end and the restoration of the holy cities of the Savior, we find then the focus of our understanding is not on the Mid-East at this point, but Africa. Let's understand why. Firstly then, you find the United States being the despised one of the 21st verse of the 11th chapter. We already have indications, and Germany already asked the CIA people over there in Germany, some of them, to leave the country. It's already showing its place. And then, not only this, because of the manipulation of the USD and the monetary systems throughout the world, US is becoming more and more rejected. So then, this is the first situation. The second, you find then the violent ones. Let's try to find these regarding then the sons of the kingdom of the south. As we read then, firstly, the 11th chapter and the 4th verse gives us a section of it regarding then, and the kingdom of the south shall be great. So then, later on, 10 verses later, you find many shall stand up against the kingdom of the south and the sons of the violent ones. Because of these, we must make a reference then of Yeshayahu chapter 1:8, and woe to the land beyond the rivers of Ethiopia. So these layers must be matched. So what is important then for us during this time of the restoration period, where technology is then ruling very strongly. What would be the link with technology and Congo, the richest place in Africa? There is only an answer regarding then the rare materials responsible for most of our technology. Many people, they don't understand. They use computers and telephones, and what those people are using as far as mobile systems simply is a form of radio with a high frequency. And those kinds of equipment requires rare materials, and Congo is replete with it. We find then the 11th chapter of Daniel, and then the kingdom of the south shall be great. We must understand Daniel is speaking as a statesperson, except the covenant when he speaks as a prophet. We understand the rest of it as on behalf of Gentiles. So then, you find then sections of covenant. You find then the previous covenant, as far as we can understand, because both names are related with the presence of the Creator and Ibrahim. But then you have the first tabernacle service and you have the second tabernacle services. Not only these, you find then these prophecies very interesting because we can link up later with Revelation, as we discover this information regarding then the time of the end. We are being then revealed. So then, the Soviet Union, what do we understand? And coming later with much equipment, as we understand, is equipment of war. As we find then skirmishes then with the kingdom of the north and kingdom of the south, precisely then the Soviet Union at the moment and the African continent. But what would be an area of Africa that would give then the technology for the Soviets to come up with much equipment, modernized equipment, and then becoming prominent worldwide? We can understand the war in Congo. So, contrary of so many people thinking as far as the Middle East always being the focus, at this time it's not. In fact, you find then, firstly then, as per the information of the prophet Yeshayahu, you find then the land of Cush. The land of Cush is in northern Sudan. Somewhere around the area over there, that's where then Yohanan was at when he was then during the time of the first city. That's where he was at. That's why you find then the prophet making mentioning of it. So then you find the first holy city as precisely where then Yohanan was at, because of the persecution of the land after the ascension of the Savior. So then, these should give us more understanding as far as the relationship with the kingdom of the north and kingdom of the south. Then there are also talks of having a railroad linking then Congo. Extremely important, because the kingdom of the north not only has a huge influence in Congo and the areas related with what then Yeshayahu the prophet has mentioned, but then if you read the 7th verse of the 11th chapter of Daniel, you find then the gentile netzer. You find then the socialist system being restored. As we understand, Mr. Putin, the president and leader of the northern kingdom, is in Brazil during this day. Then he visited Cuba. They signed 10 deals, very important, and then they were able to pardon lots of debts that Cuba had during the time of the former. We must link then the 7th verse then with 7 verses later. You find then, obviously, a relation with this section of the prophecy. And then later on, the northern kingdom shall come with much equipment. However, this equipment is because then the socialist system is again re-established. Not only this, but then you find the submarine warfare also being very important. As we read then parts of Job, you find then a section of the time of the end and the leviathans of the sea. Try to understand those technical terms. They do not line up with the instructions, because the Creator has no relation with the works of man in this earth. This earth is extremely contaminated, and the wordings used in the holy instructions, you have to understand the content. But we do understand that there was a sea monster centuries ago, and then he used these understandings so then we can match up with the rest of it. As we can understand, the new system is showing itself up. Already came out in Breaks Post, very important British newspaper via online. You find then the BRICS Bank is adjusting itself and receiving petitions from other countries and becoming members of it. They are evaluating the situation at the moment, but then Argentina has already showed lots of interest in becoming part of this important group. And then the BRICS Bank is ready for lending their resources from 12 to 24 months, precisely the time that it was then explained before. And we had taken these understandings from the instructions, so no person can receive any kind of a glory or credit for it. Not only this, then you find these netzer, China being the leader of trade at this time. Unfortunately, Brazil is bankrupt, and the nation has to start from scratch. And then 5th of October is then election. Going to find a new person to get some sort of a order in this country, where then people are absolutely rejecting each other. They are involved with games and World Cups and junk. And not only this, but the country at the moment have no resources to continue on, except printing out more money. As then Dragon Mart, then the most powerful and most important market in the world, opening up in Cancun, Mexico, we can understand what will take place regarding South America. As then the BRICS is becoming then more prominent, nations of the South American countries are trying and becoming part of it, because the new system must come via computer, and the linking up of the monetary systems of the world must be done very shortly. There is another point of these understandings as far as then the rejected one later receiving much wealth. The exploration of this topic doesn't take very much to get these forward on, because at the moment the economy of the US is absolutely bankrupt. They are spending much more than they are earning, and the printing out of money festival is absolutely very strong. However, we understand the economy of the US won't ever improve again. The tendency is to go down, down, and down. However, the only link there is available at the moment is the monetary system yet used in the world. As we can read these instructions, we find then the kingdom of the north making a deal with the kingdom of the south. We understand later the kingdom of the north must become prominent as far as much military equipment. But then you find the US, the rejected one, then receiving much wealth from it. The only point you can establish among these is having the USD as a virtual monetary system and linker, making what Daniel at the time did, and then Great Britain did with the pound. US is absolutely on the same line. They must understand the importance of USD being the linker to do this instantly, the exchange via computer. And then later on the investment in the Chinese system, then investment on products, investment in the Chinese system, where then the BRICS are then the very leader of this new system. Then you find later on, not only regarding the verse number 21st verse, you find the despised one, and then later on you find the relationship, and then the returning of the ships. You find at some point then the military of US must retrieve. So lots of these situations are taking place, but at the moment you find the most important topic is understanding then the relationship of the Kingdom of the North, the Soviet Union, and the Kingdom of the South. Much more when then Mr. Xi from China makes a deal with the Congo. Extremely important, because then the netzer found then on the 7th chapter, or rather the 7th verse of the 11th chapter, you find then the relationship where deals be made so then the riches of Congo can work on benefit of the Soviet Union and obviously China. But then have in mind that the US in its monetary system must have a linker, and this linker is the very point will to bring them lots of wealth. So the monetary system and the computerized money exchange is the very point where the nations are striving for some sort of reference, because there are so many exchanges and the danger of abuse from US is extremely high. As this monetary system are then computerized, then reduces the chances of abuse, and then can give a chance for growth, so then nations can become responsible. And those nations trying then only to print out money and making a feast out of it, those people are out. This should give us a piece of the prophecies of Daniel the 11th chapter. Truly not only this, but then you find then the glory of the covenant. You find these precisely as then Yeshayahu had mentioned regarding then the northern Sudan, the land of Cush. You find the returning of the holy cities. You find then spring feast and autumn feast. You find the seasons. So we understand then the holy cities are returning, so then the world have then once again directives. And then the new world order has ended. We have only remnants of a paragraph or system or a saying of new world order. It doesn't exist anymore. We are then doing what the prophet Daniel has mentioned regarding then these new system, and the relation with them is in the entire chapter of Daniel the 11th chapter. So then he speaks then later on not only this, but then speaks of the hypocrisy. Obviously the word of hypocrisy comes from hypocrite, that was used during the Greco theaters, so you have then a bit of literary activity using words that do not exist in the Hebrew language. But then you find the very oracles, those guarding the oracles of the Holy Creator, then later on manipulating the system because of the holy city in Sudan, or then land of Cush. Later on, those 7 cities of Asia Minor regarding Revelation must also be re-established. And these understandings then, as you read, you will understand. Now, if you have only pleasure in your mind, if you want to spend your day only enjoying yourself, you won't ever understand these prophecies. That's why then the Creator Himself has given then guidelines, so then we should be disciplined and read His holy word. Later on, you're going to study more of this relationship, because as we read the newspaper, you find more news regarding then the new system. So please stay tuned. Much more coming up.